I didn't cry when my daughter said it. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even ask her to explain. I smiled. That smile confused everyone in the room, because just seconds earlier my own daughter had looked at me and said, in a calm voice that felt colder than silence, "Mom, either you follow my husband's rules in this house, or you leave. No anger, no guilt, no love." The room felt tight, like the walls were leaning in. My heart was beating so hard I could hear it in my ears. I stood there, hands folded, trying to understand how we had come to this moment. That was the exact second I realized something painful. This wasn't about rules. This wasn't about respect. This was betrayal. And the strange thing is, calm doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes calm is the moment right before everything changes. My name is Elizabeth Harper. I'm a mother, a widow, and until that night, I believed family never turns its back on you. I raised my daughter alone after her father passed away suddenly when she was just 10. No warning. One day he was there, the next day he was gone. I remember standing in the hospital corridor, holding her hand, promising her quietly that no matter what happened next, I would protect her. And I did. I worked long hours. I took extra shifts. I missed birthdays of friends, weekends, holidays. I learned how to stretch a single meal into two. I wore the same coat for years so she could have new school uniforms. When she was scared at night, she slept beside me. When she doubted herself, I reminded her who she was. I didn't just raise her. I built my entire life around her. So when she grew up and fell in love, I didn't interfere. Even when my instincts whispered that something wasn't right, I ignored them. I didn't want to be controlling. I didn't want to lose her trust. His name was Daniel. He was polite in public, always calm, always measured. The kind of man who never raises his voice but somehow still makes people uncomfortable. At first, he treated me with respect. He smiled, asked questions, nodded at the right moments. But there was something else too, something quiet, something firm, control. When they married, my daughter asked me to move in with them. "Mom, it makes sense," she said. "You don't need to live alone anymore. We'll take care of you." Those words meant everything to me. I sold the small house I had finally managed to buy after years of saving. I packed up memories, photographs, old furniture. I told myself I was stepping into a new chapter, one where I would be closer to my daughter than ever before. What I didn't realize was that I was stepping into a place where I would slowly disappear. At first it was subtle. "Mom, Daniel likes dinner early. Mom, Daniel prefers quiet in the mornings. Mom, please ask before inviting anyone over." Each sentence sounded reasonable. Each request was wrapped in a polite tone. So I adjusted. I didn't argue. I didn't complain. Then the rules started stacking up. Which room I could use, when I could use the kitchen, what was appropriate to wear at home. And slowly, my daughter stopped defending me. She stopped calling me Mom when Daniel was around. She started calling me Elizabeth. That hurt more than anything else. The night everything broke, we were all in the living room. Daniel was sitting on the sofa, scrolling on his phone, not even pretending to listen. My daughter stood near the window, arms crossed, her back slightly turned toward me. "Mom, we need to talk," she said. I felt it then, that heavy feeling in your chest when you know something bad is coming but you still hope you're wrong. She took a breath. "Daniel feels uncomfortable. He thinks you don't really respect how things work in this house." I looked at her, waiting for her to meet my eyes. "What do you mean?" I asked quietly. She finally turned toward me. "This is his house too. He's the one responsible here. Responsible, not partner, not equal, authority." And then she said it, slowly, clearly. "If you can't accept that, maybe it's better if you find somewhere else to live." The words landed harder than any shout ever could. I waited. I truly did. I waited for her to change her mind, to say she didn't mean it, to remember who I was to her. She didn't. Daniel didn't look up once. That's when I smiled. Not because I felt strong, not because I felt proud, but because I finally understood. I had spent months shrinking myself in a house that no longer wanted me. I had given up my independence, my home, my voice, all for a family that had already decided I was a problem. I stood up slowly. My legs felt weak, but my voice didn't shake. "I understand," I said. "You've made your choice." My daughter looked relieved. Daniel finally glanced up, surprised by how easily I accepted it. They thought I would beg. They thought I would panic. They thought I had nowhere to go. They were wrong. I walked to my room, packed only what I needed, and left without another word. I didn't slam the door. I didn't cry in front of them. I walked out calmly. What they didn't know was that leaving quietly was not the end. It was the beginning. Because sometimes when a woman walks away without fighting, she's already planning what comes next. I didn't know where I was going when I stepped outside that house. The night air felt colder than it should have. My hands were shaking, not from fear but from something deeper, shock maybe, or disbelief. I stood on the pavement for a long moment, staring at the front door behind me, half expecting it to open. It didn't. No footsteps, no voice calling my name, no one coming after me. That silence told me everything I needed to know. I pulled my coat tighter around me and started walking. Every step felt strange, like I was learning how to move again. This was the same street I had walked down countless times before, carrying groceries, laughing with my daughter, feeling like I belonged. Now I felt like a stranger. I booked a small room at a modest guest house not far away. The woman at the desk smiled politely, asked my name, handed me a key. She didn't know she was giving shelter to a woman whose life had just split in two. Inside the room, I sat on the edge of the bed and finally let the weight of it all sink in. I wasn't angry yet. I was empty. I stared at the wall for a long time, replaying every moment in my head, every rule I followed, every time I stayed quiet, every moment I chose peace over dignity. And the question that hurt the most wasn't why Daniel treated me that way. It was why my daughter let him. That night, sleep didn't come easily. My body was tired, but my mind refused to rest. I kept seeing her face, not angry, not cruel, just distant. As if I had already become a problem she needed to solve. The next morning, I woke up early. The room was quiet, sunlight slipping through thin curtains. For a moment, I forgot where I was. Then it all came back. I reached for my phone. No messages, no missed calls, not from my daughter, not from Daniel. That silence wasn't accidental. It was deliberate. And for the first time since I walked out, something inside me shifted. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was awake. I went downstairs for breakfast, barely tasting the food. Around me, people laughed, talked about ordinary things. Their lives continued as if nothing had happened. Mine felt paused, stuck between what it was and what it was becoming. After breakfast, I went back to my room and opened my bag. That's when I saw the folder, brown, slightly worn, filled with papers I had kept out of habit more than intention. Documents I hadn't looked at in years. Papers related to the house, the finances, the decisions I had made when my daughter was still young. I don't know why I opened it that morning. Maybe instinct, maybe fate. As I flipped through the pages, memories came rushing back. Late nights at the dining table, calculator in hand. Signing documents after my husband passed. Making choices I thought were temporary but turned out to be permanent. Then I saw it, the deed, my name. Not Daniel's, not my daughter's, mine. I sat there, staring at the paper, my heart pounding again, but this time for a different reason. When they bought that house years ago, my daughter was still studying. Daniel didn't have stable income. I was the one with savings. I was the one who put down the deposit. I was the one who signed when the bank required a guarantor. The agreement was simple back then. The house would be in my name temporarily. Later we'd change it. Later never came. I trusted them. They trusted my silence. And suddenly everything looked different. That house wasn't just a place I had lived. It was something I still legally owned. I laughed softly, not out of joy, but disbelief. All this time I had been made to feel like a guest in my own property. I had followed rules in a house that was never fully theirs to control. But I didn't feel victorious. Not yet. Because revenge isn't about anger. It's about timing. I put the folder back carefully. I didn't rush. I didn't call anyone. I didn't confront them. Instead, I waited. That afternoon, my phone finally buzzed. A message from my daughter. "Mom, are you okay?" That was it. No apology, no regret, just concern wrapped in distance. I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. "I'm fine. Just taking some space." She didn't reply. And that told me something else. She expected me to struggle, to panic, to come back. Daniel expected silence, obedience, weakness. I gave them none of it. Over the next few days, I moved into a small rented flat. Nothing fancy, just clean, quiet, and mine. For the first time in months, I could breathe without asking permission. I started taking walks again, sitting with a cup of tea in the mornings, listening to my own thoughts. And slowly the hurt turned into clarity. I remembered things I had ignored before. Daniel controlling finances. Daniel discouraging my daughter from visiting me alone. Daniel subtly isolating her, the same way he isolated me. This wasn't just about me being pushed out. This was about power, and I had handed him more than I realized. One evening, as I sat in my flat, my phone rang again. This time, it was Daniel. His voice was calm, polite, too polite. "Elizabeth," he said, "we need to talk." I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because I knew something he didn't. "Yes," I said calmly, "we probably do." He paused, just for a second, and in that pause, I heard uncertainty. Because when someone who expects control suddenly feels resistance, fear quietly follows. And that's when I knew. Walking away hadn't made me powerless. It had given me distance, and distance was exactly what I needed to see the truth clearly. The real story was just beginning. Daniel didn't wait long after that call. The next morning, my phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a call, it was a message. "We should meet. There are things we need to clear up." No greeting, no warmth, just control wrapped in calm words. I didn't reply right away. That alone felt powerful. For months, I had responded instantly, adjusted my time, reshaped my life around his comfort. Now, I let the message sit. An hour passed, then 2. Finally, I replied, "Let me know what you want to discuss." I could almost feel his irritation through the screen. Daniel wasn't used to waiting. He wasn't used to uncertainty. His control worked because everyone around him stayed predictable. I had stopped being predictable. We agreed to meet at a quiet cafe. Neutral ground, public, safe. When I arrived, Daniel was already there, seated perfectly straight, hands folded, eyes scanning the room like he was measuring it. My daughter sat beside him. She looked tired, older somehow. She smiled when she saw me, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Mom," she said softly. I sat down slowly, placing my bag beside me. I didn't rush. I didn't apologize for being late. Daniel spoke first. "We're concerned," he said. "You left without notice. It caused unnecessary tension." Unnecessary. I looked at him calmly. "I was asked to leave." He nodded, as if acknowledging a minor misunderstanding. "We didn't mean it that way. We just wanted boundaries respected." I turned to my daughter. "Is that how you remember it?" She hesitated. Just for a moment. That hesitation told me everything. "Yes," she said quietly. "We just want peace, peace." The word felt heavy. I realized then how carefully Daniel had shaped her language. Peace, respect, boundaries, all gentle words, all hiding something harder underneath. "I understand," I said. "That's why I didn't argue." Daniel seemed pleased. He leaned back slightly, relaxing. "Good. Then perhaps you can come back. We can set clearer expectations." There it was, not an invitation, a condition. I smiled faintly. "I don't think that's a good idea." My daughter's eyes widened. Daniel's jaw tightened. "What do you mean?" he asked. "I mean," I said calmly, "I won't live somewhere I'm treated like a guest." He laughed softly. It's our home. I met his eyes. Is it? For the first time, his confidence flickered. The conversation shifted after that. Daniel started talking about finances, about contributions, about how things had been managed. He spoke as if educating me, explaining things I already knew. I listened. I always listened. When he finished, I took a sip of my tea and said, "Do you remember when you applied for the mortgage?" He blinked. "Of course. And do you remember who signed as guarantor?" He paused. My daughter frowned. "Mom, why does that matter?" "It matters," I said gently, "because I think there are things we all forgot." Daniel cleared his throat. "That was temporary." "Yes," I said. "So was my patience." The table went quiet. I didn't explain further. I didn't need to. I wasn't there to win an argument. I was there to plant a thought. Uncertainty. That cafe meeting changed something. After that day, Daniel's tone shifted. He became careful, less commanding, more polite. It was subtle, but I noticed. My daughter started calling more often. Short calls, hesitant questions. "Mom, are you settling in okay? Mom, do you need anything?" Guilt was seeping in, but guilt alone doesn't break control. Truth does. I spent the next few weeks quietly organizing my life, speaking to a solicitor, reviewing documents, confirming details I had ignored for too long. Everything was exactly as I remembered. The house was still legally mine, and Daniel had been acting like it wasn't. I didn't rush to confront them. Revenge doesn't need speed, it needs precision. Instead, I waited for Daniel to make the next move. He did. One evening, he called again. His voice was calm, but I could hear tension beneath it. "We're thinking of renovating," he said, "expanding the kitchen, making changes." I smiled to myself. "That sounds expensive." "We've spoken to the bank," he continued. "There are some complications." I said nothing. "They mentioned your name," he added carefully. There it was. Fear. "What about my name?" I asked softly. "Well," he said, "they said we can't proceed without your consent." Consent? The same thing he never asked me for when making rules in my own home. "I see," I said. "That's unfortunate." There was silence on the line. Finally, he spoke. "Perhaps we should talk properly. As a family. As a family." The word felt strange coming from him. "Yes," I said. "Perhaps we should." After that call, I sat quietly in my flat, staring out the window. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sad. I felt steady. Because for the first time, Daniel wasn't in control of the situation, and my daughter, whether she realized it or not, was standing at the edge of a truth she had avoided. Soon, she would have to choose, and choices always reveal who we really are. Something changed after that phone call. Not all at once, not loudly, but in small, quiet ways that only someone paying close attention would notice. My daughter started calling more often. Not just quick check-ins, but longer conversations. She asked about my day. She asked how I was sleeping. She even laughed once, softly, the way she used to before marriage complicated everything. But underneath it, I could hear something else. Doubt. One evening she called while Daniel was still at work. I could tell by the way she spoke, more relaxed, less careful. "Mom," she said, "can I ask you something?" "Of course," I replied. "Do you think I've changed?" The question caught me off guard. I stayed quiet for a moment, choosing my words carefully. "I think life changes people," I said. "Sometimes slowly, sometimes without us noticing." She sighed. "Daniel says I've become too soft." There it was. Not anger, not control. Criticism disguised as concern. "What do you think?" I asked her. "I don't know," she said. "I feel like I'm always trying to keep things calm. Like if I make one wrong move, everything will fall apart." Her voice sounded tired, worn down. That's when I realized something important. Daniel didn't just push me out. He was slowly wearing her down, too. I didn't tell her what to think. I didn't warn her. I didn't attack him. Instead, I asked a simple question. "Do you remember when you used to feel safe speaking your mind?" She went quiet. That silence told me more than any answer. After that call, I sat alone in my flat, thinking about how carefully Daniel had shaped the world around him. He didn't shout, he didn't threaten, he didn't break things. He adjusted reality. He made everyone else responsible for his comfort, and he punished discomfort with distance. I knew that pattern well now. A few days later, my daughter showed up at my door, unannounced. She looked around the small flat, surprised by how peaceful it felt. Simple furniture, warm light, no tension hanging in the air. "You seem calmer," she said. "I am," I replied. She sat down, fidgeting with her hands. "Daniel's been stressed lately." I waited. "He says the bank is being difficult," she continued. "He thinks you're doing this on purpose." I smiled faintly. "Doing what?" "Making things complicated," she said. I leaned back slightly. "Did I cause the complications?" She didn't answer. I could see the conflict in her eyes. Loyalty fighting with logic. Love tangled with fear. "Did he tell you I owned the house?" I asked gently. Her head snapped up. "What?" I asked. I said calmly. "No," she said slowly. "He said you were just helping us, that everything was transferred." "That's interesting," I said. "Because it wasn't." Her face drained of color. "I didn't pull out documents. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I let the truth sit between us." "That can't be right," she whispered. "He wouldn't lie to me." I reached across the table and placed my hand over hers. "I don't think he started out planning to. I think he just never thought you'd question it." She pulled her hand back gently, standing up. "I need to go," she said. "Take your time," I replied. "Truth doesn't disappear when you walk away." After she left, I knew things would move faster. People like Daniel can sense when control is slipping, and they don't handle it well. That night, he called me again. His tone was sharper now. "You're confusing her," he said. "I'm answering questions," I replied. "You're manipulating the situation," he snapped. I laughed softly. "You don't like being questioned." He exhaled sharply. "We need to settle this." "Yes," I said. "We do." The next few days were tense. My daughter stopped calling. Daniel sent messages filled with polite pressure, suggestions, deadlines, warnings disguised as concern. I didn't respond to most of them. Instead, I focused on preparing. I arranged a meeting with the solicitor. I confirmed my rights. I made sure every detail was clear. Not to punish, to protect. Then one evening, my daughter called again. She was crying. "He says I have to choose," she said. "He says you're trying to take our home." I closed my eyes. "Did he ask you to choose before?" I asked. "No," she whispered. "Then why now?" She was silent. "Mum," she said, "I don't recognize him anymore." I spoke gently. "Sometimes people don't change. They just stop hiding." She sobbed quietly. "I didn't say I told you so. I didn't say I warned you. I just stayed on the line until she calmed down. That was the moment I knew. The mask was slipping. Daniel's control depended on secrecy, on silence, on people not comparing notes. And now, the truth was spreading, slowly, quietly, exactly the way I needed it to. Because revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's simply letting someone face the consequences of their own actions. And Daniel was getting closer to that moment, whether he realized it or not. Daniel didn't wait long after that. People like him never do. When control starts slipping, they rush, they push harder. They try to force the ending they want before the truth fully catches up to them. 2 days after my daughter's tearful call, he showed up at my door, unannounced. I saw him through the window first, standing stiffly outside my flat, adjusting his coat, already irritated by the fact that he had to come to me. That alone told me how desperate he was. I didn't open the door right away. I made him wait. When I finally did, his smile appeared instantly, polite, controlled, fake. "Elizabeth," he said, "we need to talk." "Do we?" I replied calmly. He stepped inside without being invited, glancing around as if assessing whether this place matched the image he had built of me struggling. It didn't. "You're upsetting her," he said, skipping pleasantries. "She hasn't been sleeping." "That's unfortunate," I replied. "But not surprising." He frowned. You know what I mean. I do, I said. You're afraid she's thinking. That hit a nerve. He straightened his posture, his voice sharpening just slightly. You're overstepping. Whatever paperwork exists, the house is our home. Morally, the word made me laugh softly. Morality doesn't erase signatures, I said. His jaw tightened. What do you want? There it was. Not an apology. Not understanding. A demand. I want peace, I said, the kind that doesn't require silence. He scoffed. You're being dramatic. No, I replied. I'm being honest. For the first time, his calm cracked. You think you can just walk back in and take control? He snapped. I don't want control, I said. I want fairness. He shook his head, pacing slightly. You're ruining everything. I met his eyes. You ruined it the moment you forgot who built the foundation. He stopped pacing. Be careful, he said quietly. That wasn't a threat. It was a warning born from fear. I am, I replied. I always have been. He left shortly after, slamming the door harder than he meant to. That alone confirmed everything I suspected. That night, my daughter called again. This time, her voice sounded different, clearer. He wants to sell the house, she said. I paused. Did he ask you how you feel about that? No, she admitted. He said it's the only way to fix things. Fix things. By running, by escaping consequences. Do you want to sell? I asked. I don't know, she said, but I want the truth. Those words felt heavier than anything else she could have said. I can give you that, I replied. We agreed to meet the next day. Just the two of us. When she arrived, she looked nervous but determined. She sat across from me, hands wrapped tightly around her cup. I went through our documents, she said. The ones Daniel keeps. I raised an eyebrow. And? Things don't add up, she admitted. There are gaps, things he never explained. I nodded slowly. That's because explanations threaten control. She swallowed. Why didn't you ever tell me? I trusted you, I said gently, and I didn't want to turn you against him. She looked down. He said you're trying to turn me against him now. I leaned forward. Am I telling you lies? She shook her head. Then ask yourself, I continued softly, why truth feels dangerous to him. She didn't answer right away, but I could see it happening behind her eyes. The realization, the cracks forming. That evening, Daniel called her repeatedly. She ignored the calls. That silence did something powerful. It shifted the balance. The next day, he sent a message to both of us, asking for a meeting. Formal, polite, controlled again. I agreed. Public place, neutral ground. When we sat down, the air was thick with tension. Daniel tried to speak first. I think emotions have clouded this situation, he said. My daughter interrupted him. No, she said quietly. Secrets did. He stared at her, stunned. She turned to me. Mom, tell him. I took a breath. I never intended to take anything from you, I said calmly. I only wanted respect. Instead, I was treated like an obstacle. Daniel leaned forward. You left because you asked me to, I replied. Or have you forgotten that part? He opened his mouth, then closed it. The silence stretched. Finally, my daughter spoke again. Why didn't you tell me the house was still in her name? His face hardened. It didn't matter. It mattered to me, she said. His control slipped further then. His voice rose, just slightly. I was protecting us. No, she replied. You were protecting yourself. That was the moment everything shifted. Daniel realized he wasn't winning this anymore. He stood up abruptly. This is pointless. No, I said calmly. This is accountability. He left without another word. My daughter sat back down, trembling. I don't know who he is anymore, she whispered. I reached for her hand. Sometimes we don't. Until we do. That night she stayed at my flat. Not because I asked her to, because she needed space to breathe, and for the first time in a long while, I felt something close to justice, not because I had taken anything back yet, but because the truth was finally standing where it belonged, in the open, and Daniel knew it. Daniel didn't disappear after that meeting. Men like him never do. When control fails privately, they try to reclaim it publicly. When words stop working, they lean on pressure. And when pressure fails, they reach for sympathy. The next morning, my daughter woke up to messages from him. Long ones, emotional ones, apologies mixed with blame, promises wrapped around excuses. He told her he was under stress. He told her he felt attacked. He told her everyone was turning against him. Not once did he say sorry. I watched her read the messages in silence, her face tightening with every line. "He sounds like the victim," she said quietly. "That's because he needs to be," I replied. "Victims aren't questioned." She nodded slowly. Later that day, Daniel tried a different approach. He contacted a solicitor, not to resolve things, to intimidate. I received a formal letter, carefully worded, suggesting that my involvement was causing emotional harm, that my presence was destabilizing the household, that cooperation would be in everyone's best interest. I read it twice, then I laughed, because intimidation only works when the person being threatened doesn't understand their position, and I understood mine very well. I forwarded the letter to my own solicitor and went about my day. That evening, Daniel showed up again. This time, he didn't knock. He called from outside, insisting we talk. "I just want peace," he said. "So do I," I replied. "That's why I'm not coming outside." He exhaled sharply. "You're forcing this." "No," I said. "I'm allowing it." Inside, my daughter paced back and forth, torn. "I don't want this to turn ugly," she said. "It already did," I replied gently. "You just weren't allowed to see it." That night, she finally told me something she had been holding back. "He checks my messages," she said quietly. "He says it's about transparency." My chest tightened. "He gets upset when I go out alone," she continued. "He says it's unsafe." I stayed calm, even though something inside me burned. "He says I'm too emotional when I question him," she whispered, "that I don't think logically." I reached for her hands. "That's not logic. That's control." Tears filled her eyes. "I didn't want to believe it," she said. "I thought marriage meant compromise." "Compromise doesn't erase you," I replied. That was her breaking point. The next day, she told Daniel she needed space. He didn't take it well. He showed up at her workplace. He called repeatedly. He sent messages swinging between love and blame. And then he made his biggest mistake. He threatened to expose me. He told her he would tell people I was unstable, that I was interfering, that I was trying to take what wasn't mine. She showed me the message, her hands shaking. I read it carefully and smiled. "Why are you smiling?" she asked. "Because now he's desperate," I replied. We met with my solicitor together. For the first time, she heard everything laid out clearly, the documents, the timelines, the choices that had been made quietly without her knowledge. The truth didn't just hurt, it reshaped everything. She sat there, silent, absorbing it all. "So he knew," she said finally. "He knew the house wasn't fully his." "Yes," I said, "and he built authority on silence." She closed her eyes. "I defended him," she whispered. "I defended him against you." I squeezed her hand. "You didn't know." "But he did," she said. That night, she didn't go home. She stayed with me again. Daniel's calls went unanswered. The silence drove him mad. 2 days later, he sent one final message. "If you don't come back, I'll make this public." I took the phone from her hands and typed the reply myself. "Please do." He didn't expect that. People like Daniel rely on fear of exposure. They assume everyone has something to hide. He didn't realize the truth was on our side. The following week, he tried to file a complaint, claimed emotional distress, claimed manipulation. It went nowhere. Facts don't bend for narratives. And slowly his power began to crumble. Friends asked questions. Family noticed distance. His version of events stopped lining up. My daughter watched it all with a mixture of sadness and relief. "I feel like I'm waking up," she said one evening. "You are," I replied, "and waking up is painful." She nodded. "But I don't want to go back to sleep." That was the moment I knew. The revenge wasn't about winning. It was about freedom. And Daniel, was losing his grip on both. Daniel didn't collapse all at once. He unraveled, slowly, publicly, in ways he couldn't control. It started with small things. Friends stopped calling him back, invitations dried up, conversations went quiet when he entered a room. People didn't confront him. They didn't need to. They sensed something was wrong. Truth has a way of leaking through cracks, even when no one speaks it out loud. My daughter noticed it first. People are asking questions, she told me one evening. They're asking why I'm not living at home, why you're involved, why everything feels tense. And what do you tell them? I asked. The truth, she said. At least the part I understand now. That was enough. Daniel had built his image carefully. Calm, reliable, reasonable. But once doubt enters that kind of image, it spreads quietly. People begin to replay old moments, old conversations, things they ignored before. And suddenly, his calm didn't look calm anymore. It looked calculated. He asked to meet again. Just the three of us. One last time. My daughter hesitated, but she agreed. We met in the same cafe as before. Same table, same seats. But nothing else was the same. Daniel looked tired, not stressed, not angry, exposed. He started speaking immediately, as if afraid silence would swallow him. This has gone too far, he said. People are getting the wrong idea. My daughter looked at him steadily. What idea is that? That I'm controlling, he snapped. That I've done something wrong. For I watched his face carefully. Not once did he look at me. You did control things, she said. You just convinced me it was normal. He laughed sharply. So now you're choosing her over me? There it was, old tactic.br, divide.br, force loyalty, create urgency. No, she said quietly, I'm choosing myself. That sentence hit him harder than anything else could have. He turned to me then, his voice low. You planned this. I shook my head slowly. You created it. He leaned forward. You knew what you were doing when you walked out. Yes, I said calmly. I knew I was done being silent. The cafe felt too small suddenly. People at nearby tables were listening now, not intentionally, but curiosity has a way of leaning in. Daniel noticed. His voice dropped. You've embarrassed me. I met his eyes. No, I stopped protecting you. That was the moment his control finally shattered. He stood up abruptly, knocking his chair back. I won't be part of this. No, my daughter said. You won't be in control of it. He left without another word. This time, no one followed. My daughter sat there, shaking slightly, but her eyes were clear. I don't feel scared anymore, she said. I reached across the table. That's what freedom feels like at first. Strange, quiet. The days that followed were heavy but honest. Daniel moved out, not dramatically. Not loudly, just gone. He tried to save face, told people he needed space, claimed mutual decisions, claimed misunderstandings. But no one asked him to explain. They had already seen enough. The house stood empty for a while, silent, still. One afternoon, my daughter and I walked through it together. Same walls, same rooms, different energy. I hated this place, she admitted. I just didn't know why. Because it stopped being a home, I said. Homes don't demand silence. She nodded. We didn't talk about selling it yet. We didn't talk about the future in clear terms. Some things need time. Healing isn't rushed. One evening, she looked at me and said, I'm sorry. I didn't ask for what. I chose him over you, she whispered. I didn't even realize I was doing it. I took her hands. You were choosing peace. You just didn't know the cost, she cried then. Not loudly, not dramatically, just honest tears. And for the first time in a long while, I let myself cry too. Not from pain, from release. Daniel sent one final message a week later. Short, cold, controlled again. I hope you're satisfied. I stared at it for a long moment before replying, I hope you learn. He never responded. I don't know what happened to him after that. I didn't ask. I didn't check. Because revenge isn't about watching someone fall. It's about no longer needing to look back. My daughter began rebuilding her life, slowly, carefully, on her own terms. And I did something I hadn't done in years. I trusted myself again. The quiet that followed was unfamiliar. Not the heavy silence of tension or the sharp silence after an argument. This was different. It was soft, empty in a way that felt open, not broken. For the first time in a long while, there was no one demanding anything from us. No rules to follow, no moods to manage, no walking on invisible lines. My daughter stayed with me for a few weeks after Daniel left. At first, she didn't say much. She moved through the flat carefully, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to take up space. Old habits don't disappear overnight. I noticed the little things, she would ask before sitting down. She would apologize for small accidents. She would stop herself mid-sentence, as if afraid of saying the wrong thing. Each time, I reminded her gently, "You don't have to ask." Sometimes she smiled. Sometimes she looked confused. Healing doesn't arrive with certainty. It arrives with discomfort. One evening, we sat together in the living room, tea cooling between us, the television off. She stared at the floor for a long time before speaking. "I feel like I failed you," she said. I didn't interrupt. "I thought being a good wife meant keeping things calm," she continued. "I didn't see how much I was shrinking myself. Or you." Her voice cracked. "I became someone I don't recognize." I reached for her hand. "You became someone trying to survive." She shook her head. "At your expense." "Yes," I said honestly. "But that doesn't make you cruel. It makes you human." She cried then, the kind of crying that empties you out. I held her the same way I used to when she was younger. No advice, no fixing, just presence. That night she slept deeply for the first time in months. The days that followed were slow, ordinary, beautiful in their simplicity. We cooked together. We laughed over small things. We walked through the park without rushing, without checking phones, without explaining ourselves to anyone. One afternoon, she stopped mid-walk and said, "I forgot what it feels like to breathe like this." I smiled. "That's because no one's watching." She nodded. "I never realized how much I was being watched." The house remained empty for a while. We didn't rush back into it. It had become a symbol of something heavy, something unresolved. When we finally returned together, it felt different, not haunted, just quiet. We opened windows, let light in, rearranged furniture, took down things Daniel had insisted on placing just so, with every small change, the space softened. "I don't want to live here alone," she admitted one day. "You don't have to decide yet," I replied. "This isn't about property. It's about choice." She nodded slowly. "That's what I'm learning." Daniel's absence didn't bring chaos like he had predicted. Life didn't fall apart. The world didn't collapse. Instead, it grew quieter. People stopped mentioning him. His name faded from conversations naturally, the way names do when they stop mattering. Once, my daughter asked me if I was curious about how he was doing. I thought about it honestly. "No," I said. "I'm at peace." And I meant it. Peace doesn't come from winning, it comes from closure. One evening, as we sat together, she asked me something unexpected. "Why didn't you fight back sooner?" I considered the question carefully. "Because I thought staying quiet was love," I said. "And because I didn't want to lose you." She swallowed hard. "I almost lost myself." "Yes," I said softly. "But you found your way back." That realization changed how she moved through the world. She began setting boundaries, saying no without explaining, trusting her instincts again. Watching her relearn herself was both painful and beautiful. She wasn't the same person she was before Daniel. She was stronger, not hardened, just awake. As for me, I found myself letting go of guilt I had carried for years, guilt for not seeing sooner, guilt for staying quiet, guilt for believing sacrifice was always the answer. Sacrifice without respect isn't love, it's erasure. One afternoon, she looked at me and said, "I want to rebuild our relationship properly, not as obligation, as choice." That meant everything to me. We talked openly then, about mistakes, about fears, about the things we never said when silence felt safer. It wasn't easy. But it was honest. Weeks passed, then months. The house was eventually rented out, not sold, just paused, a reminder that life doesn't need rushed endings. The income gave my daughter independence. The space gave her clarity. And me? I reclaimed myself. I traveled. I joined a book group. I built a routine that didn't revolve around anyone else's comfort. I stopped apologizing for existing. One evening, my daughter called me and said, "I don't hate him." I listened. "I don't love him either," she added. "I just see him clearly now." That was enough. Seeing clearly is freedom. We never spoke about revenge again. We didn't need to, because the truth had already done its work. And sometimes, the strongest revenge is living well, without fear, without silence, without shrinking. Time changes things in quiet ways, not with grand moments or dramatic announcements, but through ordinary days that slowly stack on top of each other until one day you realize you're no longer standing in the same place you once were. Our months passed, not the kind filled with tension or waiting, but steady months, predictable, safe. My daughter found her rhythm again. She returned to work with a confidence I hadn't seen in her for years. She stopped explaining herself unnecessarily. She laughed more freely. She trusted her own decisions, even when they were small ones. Especially when they were small ones. One afternoon she called me just to tell me she had booked a short trip alone. "I didn't ask anyone," she said, half laughing, half amazed. "I just decided." I smiled. "That's how freedom begins." She paused. "I used to think independence meant being selfish." "And now?" I asked. "Now I think it means being honest," she replied. That answer stayed with me. As for Daniel, his presence faded into the background of our lives. Not erased, but no longer central. Occasionally someone would mention him in passing. Always neutrally, always briefly. He had moved on, or at least tried to, but something about him had changed in the eyes of others. People had seen the cracks, and once you see them, you can't unsee them. I didn't feel satisfaction in that. I didn't need to, because revenge, when it's real, doesn't look like triumph. It looks like peace. One evening my daughter and I sat together, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The room glowed softly, the kind of light that makes you feel like everything is finally in its place. "Mum," she said, "do you ever regret leaving that night?" I thought about it carefully. "No," I said. "I regret staying as long as I did." She nodded slowly. "I wish I had stopped you." "You couldn't," I replied gently. "That choice was mine, and it saved both of us." She looked at me with something like admiration, something like gratitude. "I didn't see how strong you were," she said. "I didn't either," I admitted. That truth mattered. Strength doesn't always show up as resistance. Sometimes it shows up as restraint, as knowing when to walk away instead of breaking yourself trying to stay. She took a breath. "I used to think love meant endurance. And now?" I asked. "Now I think love means respect," she said, "and choice." That was when I knew she would be okay. One weekend she invited me to help her choose new furniture for her flat, not the house, her place, her space. She moved with confidence, trusting her instincts, asking my opinion, not my permission. The difference was subtle but powerful. At one point she turned to me and said, "I'm glad you didn't fight him loudly." I raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Because I don't think I would have listened," she admitted. Walking away forced me to think. That was something I hadn't considered before. Silence, when chosen, can be louder than any argument. As time passed, our conversations deepened. We spoke about things we had avoided for years: fear, loneliness, expectations we never questioned. She told me she felt ashamed of how easily she had accepted rules that erased her voice. I told her I felt ashamed for teaching her that endurance was always noble. We forgave each other slowly, not in one moment, in many small ones. One afternoon she asked me if I'd ever speak to Daniel again if he reached out. I thought about it. "I don't need to," I said. "And that's the point. She smiled softly. That night as I lay in bed, I realized something else had shifted. I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for apologies, not for explanations, not for closure from anyone else. Closure had come from within. I had reclaimed something I didn't even realize I'd lost. My voice. Weeks later, my daughter told me she had finalized the paperwork regarding the house. The decisions were practical, fair, and made without emotion clouding them. I didn't feel angry, she said, just clear. Clarity is a gift. And it doesn't come from winning. It comes from understanding. We met for lunch to celebrate her new chapter. No speeches, no dramatic words, just food, laughter, and quiet pride. At one point, she reached across the table and said, "Thank you for walking away." I squeezed her hand. "Thank you for walking back to yourself." Life didn't become perfect after that, but it became honest. And honesty is lighter to carry. There is a strange peace that comes when you stop waiting for life to apologize. Not because the pain disappears, but because you finally understand that healing doesn't need permission. Years from now, people may forget the details. They won't remember who said what, or how the house was arranged, or who stood where in that final conversation. But I will remember the feeling, the moment I realized I didn't have to shrink anymore. The moment I understood that walking away wasn't weakness but self-respect. My daughter and I sit together often now. Not out of obligation, not out of guilt, but because we want to. Because our relationship is no longer built on fear or sacrifice, but honesty. One evening she asked me something that made me smile. If you could go back, she said, would you do anything differently? I thought about the years I spent staying quiet. The nights I convinced myself patience was love. The mornings I told myself endurance was strength. Yes, I said finally, I would have trusted myself sooner. She nodded, as if that answer belonged to her too. We don't talk about Daniel much anymore, not because he doesn't matter, but because he no longer defines us. His absence is quiet, and in that quiet, we've built something better. Distance taught us what closeness never could. I learned that respect is not something you earn by suffering. I learned that love that demands silence is not love at all. And my daughter learned something even harder, that choosing yourself doesn't mean abandoning others. It means refusing to abandon yourself. Sometimes I think about the woman I was the night I walked out of that house, standing on the pavement, heart racing, unsure where I would go next. I wish I could tell her this: you will be okay. You will find your voice, and the calm you feel right now is not fear. It's freedom arriving quietly. If you're listening to this and you recognize yourself in my story, let me tell you something I wish someone had told me sooner. You don't need to prove your worth by staying where you are not respected. You don't need to raise your voice to reclaim your power. And you don't need revenge that burns everything down. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is clarity. Sometimes it's silence. And sometimes it's walking away with your head held high, knowing the truth will do the rest. I didn't destroy anyone. I didn't shout. I didn't beg. I didn't fight. I simply stopped protecting someone who never protected me. And in doing so, I protected myself. Life didn't reward me with applause. It rewarded me with peace. And that was enough. Respect is not something you should have to beg for. Love is not measured by how much you endure. And walking away doesn't mean you lost. Sometimes it means you finally chose yourself.